Hi, my name is Daniel Owen, and this is my review on the case study of Get This Child Out of My Room. In this case study, there's a first year education teacher, Susan. She's faced with a student named Carl that has some serious behavior problems at school. His teacher, Mrs. Taylor, is afraid that for both her students and herself, their safety in the classroom. And Susan's receiving very little support from parents and staff on how to handle the situation. So we're going to talk about what should she do. So what do we know from reading the case study? We can make several observations. Carl obviously has a lot of turmoil in his life. His parents are going through a divorce and separating. His mom is working 50 hours a week trying to support their family. Also, Mrs. Taylor can no longer manage Carl in her classroom. She's feeling very unsafe for both herself and the students. And lastly, Susan's a first-year special education teacher with very limited experience, so she's not real sure on what to do in this case. What we need to know. One of the first things I think we need to know is whether or not Carl is receiving any counseling services. This is something that the teachers or the special education teacher really isn't qualified to do. So I really think we need to make sure or find out if he is receiving any. Also, we need to find out if Susan has a mentor or other experienced special education teachers that she can go to for advice. We also need to find out if Mrs. Taylor's going to be able to educate both Carl and the rest of her second grade class. It sounds like she's having problems doing so with Carl in her class. So there's several problems going on. First off, Carl is in desperate need of counseling to get through what's going on between his parents and everything else at home. Next, Susan lacks experience on how to deal with Carl, and a frustrated general education teacher is something we also have to deal with. So first off, Carl's definitely going to need to get connected with either a school counselor or a professional counselor outside of school. I think the sooner the better. Sooner this happens, the better, so that Carl can begin improving his behavior and begin getting through whatever's going on. Also, Susan needs to get connected with a mentor. I think since this is a really big district, it's formed by a cooperative of 16 different schools, surely there's someone she can connect with and rely on to give her good advice on how to handle this situation. Also, we need to get some support from Mrs. Taylor. She feels kind of helpless right now. I think that maybe another teacher, maybe a male teacher or a veteran female teacher that could come down and assist with removing Carl from the room if needed and getting them placed in the resource room where he will stay until he is calmed down. So I feel like by requiring Carl to receive counseling, this will hopefully resolve some of the anger issues that he's dealing with. It's definitely unfair for his classmates and his teacher for Carl to be taking out his personal problems on them. And also by removing Carl from the room when he has outbursts will enable Mrs. Taylor to continue teaching the rest of her class without being in fear for both herself and her students. And as Susan becomes more confident in her position as a special education teacher, she will rely on past experiences, a lot like most of us do, to help deal with students such as Carl. I also think she'll become more acquainted with other staff members in the district, and she'll know who she can go to for good advice in situations such as this. So as I was reading the case study, one of the things I was thinking was I was in a situation a lot like this, feeling really helpless. Not much was getting done about a student in class. I didn't really know what to do about it other than just request, can somebody do something with this child? I can't teach when he's in the room. He's having constant outbursts, constant distractions. So I could relate to what Mrs. Taylor was going through. I also feel like Susan is not really confident enough in herself yet to make decisions on what to do with Carl. So she is moving really slow. making sure she crosses her T's and dots her I's. But at the same time, she's moving slow, and Mrs. Taylor is getting frustrated that nothing is happening. And so she's still having to deal with these problems. I did value that even though this is a very large district, and the superintendent usually isn't in every building every day. He spends like 1 day a week in each building. She was able to set up an interview with the superintendent the next morning. So it sounds like the superintendent has his priorities in line and is willing to break away from his schedule or his routine to help deal with issues that arise. So I thought that was really good to see. One of the issues I think that still needs to be resolved is whether or not the parents are going to agree with counseling Carl. And if they are going to seek an outside counseling center, we need to find out if maybe the family's insurance is going to cover the costs. Because we might not have a school counselor available that's, I guess, qualified to deal with what Carl's going through. So I also think we need to find out what's motivating Carl. We need to have both a reward system and a punishment system set in place. Because we need to figure out what are we going to do to help reward Carl for having good days and controlling his anger and his outbursts. So evidence that I promoted the academic success, personal well-being of every student by enhancing the instructional capacity. So first off, I'm promoting the academic success of all students in 3 ways. First, requiring Carl to receive counseling for what's going on in his personal life. This will help his academic success increase. He's going to spend a lot less time consumed by his problems, more time focusing on himself, and hopefully building relationships or rebuilding relationships between himself and Mrs. Taylor, his teacher, and also his other classmates. Also, hopefully by removing Carl from the class when he is having outbursts or when he's having a really bad day, this takes all of his other classmates' attention away from their teacher and from their own learning. So hopefully removing Carl from the classroom will help the other students be more successful. And also, as soon as Mrs. Taylor feels comfortable again, she can spend more time teaching and focusing on all of her students instead of spending most of her day worried about what is Carl going to do next. Promoting personal well-being. Hopefully removing Carl from the classroom when he's having a bad day, when he's having some of these outbursts. This takes away the chance or the possibility of him causing any physical or verbal harm to his classmates. Also, hopefully promoting Carl's personal well-being by getting him the help that he needs, because up until this point, I don't think he is. And if Carl continues down this path of these outbursts and putting other people in danger, he's going to end up either dropping out of school or ending up in trouble with the law. So we got to do everything we can to keep that from happening. And by connecting Susan with other staff members in our large district, she'll have more resources to help her handle other situations with students that will arise. Lastly, for increasing the instructional capacity, hopefully connecting Susan with other special education teachers. She'll get some great feedback from them on how to handle various situations. A lot of us always rely on our past experiences, and she doesn't really have a whole lot to rely on. So hopefully that she can just get some advice from other people. Also having a mentor assigned to her. She might not feel comfortable just going up and asking other people for advice, but if she's got a mentor calling her and asking her, is there anything I can help you with or what's going on right now, hopefully that would help. And also having Mrs. Taylor observe either another classroom or maybe a special education room for her to get ideas about how to handle outbursts of misbehavior. It seems like she's just not really sure on what to do or how to handle Carl when he's having one of these bad days. And I think if she spends some time watching maybe someone who deals with these kind of outbursts on a daily basis, she'll get some good ideas on what she can do to help prevent any outbursts, and maybe help get Carl back onto track, to keep him from having to leave the room. Because the last thing I think that anybody wants is for Carl to be taken out of the learning environment, because if he's just in the resource room, chances are he's just going to be sitting there until he calms down, and not learning anything and getting further and further behind. So hopefully all of these things that we're going to try to do and implement will get Carl back on the right track so he can be a successful student and graduate, become a successful member of society.